Hello Year 3. We're looking at reading bar graphs today. So we'll begin by looking at the in focus question, moving on to looking at that bar graph and also what the smaller markings mean, and then it's your turn. So the in focus question, it says there are different types of pastries are sold at a bakery each day. The baker draws a bar graph to show the number of each type of pastry he sold in one day. So at the top of the bar graph there is the title, which tells us what the bar graph is all about. So it says type of pastries sold, and then on the left hand side it shows us the different types. So we have donuts, croissants, cream puffs and cupcakes, and at the bottom there is our scale, and as you can see there are clear numbers 0, 5, 10, so that's going up in fives, but in between there are little or smaller markings, and they are really important because if you notice, not all of the bars go directly to one of the larger numbers. So if we look at donuts, for example, and we look at how many donuts the baker sold, we go to that section at the top, which is the pink bar, and it clearly hits the line where it says 45. Okay, so that's really simple. But if we have a little look at the croissants or even the cream puffs, those don't quite get to that bar. Okay, they're slightly less. So that's where the little markings come into play. So have a little look. What does the data tell us? And see if you can interpret it and represent it in either a table or some sort of different method. Okay, so we've got the bar graph. So like we said, what does it show? So first of all, it shows us which of the pastries is the most popular, and without even having to count, we can tell that the donuts are the most popular, and that is because the pink bar is longer than all of the others, and this data set also uses it horizontally. So instead of the scale going vertical like we're used to, the scale is horizontal, which means it's going across rather than up. So we can clearly see that the donuts were the most popular, and I'm pretty sure we can all tell which was the least. So the least popular was the croissants, because that is the shortest bar. Okay. Now, like we mentioned, not all the bars hit one of those lines. Okay, they're just short of hitting those lines where the big numbers are. So it goes 0, 5, 10, 15. So donut hit that line, and if we looked down to the scale, it was on 45. But croissants and the cream puffs do not, and that's where these little lines come into play. So this is where you need to have a little look and figure out what those little markings go up in. And how you're best to do it is by trial and error. So it's telling us that at the beginning it's 0, and then the next big number is 5. So to work out what those little marks mean, think what we could be counting up in order to reach 5. So there are 4 little marks. So if we were to count up in twos, so 0, and then the first little mark being 2, and then 4, then 6, then 8, then the big number should have been 10, and it's not. So the little markings are less than 2. So what's less than 2? 1. So then have another go. Is each little marking worth 1? If we count on, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that hits that 5. So those little markings, each one is worth 1. Okay, so that's important. You always have to check what your scale is going up in, just like we talked about with the key. So what is each pastry worth now? So now we know that those little increments, those little marks are going up in ones. How many croissants is there? or how many cream puffs, and the cupcakes is really easy because we can read that off with the big number. So write them out now as well. So we've got 45 donuts, really simple, and there are 19 croissants. Now, how you could do this is look at the big numbers that it's in between. So the croissant is in between 15 and 20. So the answer is going to be in between those two big numbers. And if you look carefully at the scale, it's closer to the 20. So what I would do is I'd count backwards. So it's only one less, so it must be 19. Okay, so 20, take away the 1 is 19. And again, you could read it on. Okay, so you could go 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So you could count on as well. And then cream puffs, there are 23 cream puffs. And again, look at the two numbers it's in between. And you can either start at 20 and count on to see which one it gets to, or you can start at 25 and count back. Okay, it's easier to start with the one it's closest to. And because it looks roughly closest to 25, I'd start with 25 and I'd count back. And then there are 35 cupcakes. Okay, so we've got our main bits of data that it shows. But we are also going to look at, now if we have a little look at another question we could ask, how many more donuts were sold than cream puffs? So with this question, I don't need the whole data set. I just need to look at the donuts and the cream puffs. And I know from working it out and using the scale, there were 45 donuts and 23 cream puffs. And like I said, we use that scale at the bottom to find that information out. Now, because we're wanting to see the difference between how many donuts were sold in comparison to the cream puffs, we're going to be using take away. We're going to use a number sentence that involves taking away because we're finding the difference between the two. So, I will have 45 donuts, take away 23 cream puffs. Now I'm going to use the column method to work this out. You could make 45 and take away 23. Okay, we use the tens and ones at school, but you could use, for tens you could create tens by using pencils, pens or cutlery. For the ones you could use pasta pieces or counters, whatever's easiest to get hold of. Make 45 and then take away 23. The children are really confident to do this, so they should be fine. But I'm going to use the column method. So if I put those numbers in, so 45 to begin with, and then I'm going to take away 23. I know that 45 has 5 ones and 4 tens, hence why I've put them in those columns, and 23 has 3 ones and 2 tens, okay? And I'm going to take those 23 away from 45. So 5 take away 3 gives me 2, and then 40 take away 20 gives me 20. So I should be left with 22. So the difference as to how many more donuts were sold in comparison to cream puffs, there were 22 more donuts than cream puffs sold in one day. And now it's your turn. So go on to Google Classroom and you will have questions like this where you're given again a data set. So the bar graph shows the number of children who liked each type of food, and like we can see at the bottom this time, instead of the scale being at the bottom, the scale is going vertical, so up, and across the bottom are the different types of food. Okay, you've got spaghetti, fish and chips, sausages and mash, salad, burger and chips, and it shows you which was preferred, which was their favourite, and then you'll have some questions to have a go at. So there's some, and there's that and more on Google Classroom. Have a go.